So everyone, welcome to the Ignite sessions. Please enjoy your lunch while you're watching 7 people either hitting it perfectly at every slide transition or maybe slightly getting out of sync or failing. It will be fun, nevertheless. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you the host for today, the MC extraordinaire, chief troublemaker in the Java world, the amazing Simon Maple. Give him a round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. So, first of all, what is an Ignite talk? Who's been to Ignite talks before? Most people. Okay, a few not. So, Ignite talks. I'm just going to give a very brief introduction, then I'll hand over to the first speaker. An Ignite talk is essentially 20 slides, and on each of the slide, they can pretty much put whatever content they want. They create the slides. It's not a blind Ignite. No one's creating them for them. And there's 5 minutes of sessions between 5 minutes of content per speaker. Now, one of the key things here is that time, the speaker isn't in control of their slides. The slides are automatically progressing every 15 seconds. Now, 15 seconds isn't a lot. By the time that a couple of seconds have gone, the speaker's probably looking at the slide, trying to work out what they wanted to say. They're mumbling, they're talking, they're rambling, and at this point, they remember what they're trying to say. They try and rush it in about 2-3 seconds, and then they continue on to the next slide, and then they're following the same problem. So this is one of the biggest problems. We have quite a packed agenda, so we have 5 minutes for each of these. I personally think Bert asked me to MC because obviously I'm not a native speaker, so I'm going to struggle slightly on names and titles perhaps, but rather than embarrass myself, I'm going to actually say them as if they were English words. So we'll see how this goes. So introducing the first speaker, a software developer and speaker at Info Support BV, strong with the force, and I'm just reading your Twitter bio, strong with the force, a musician, a passionate fan of Feyenoord, and Switchfoot. Hope is the anthem of your soul. That's very beautiful. So, talking about these songs would make some great code comments. Please give a big round of applause to Hanno Embregts.
Well, thank you, Simon. Hello, my name is Hanno, and I like making both software and music. In fact, my brain often combines these two things. Now, our first code example immediately demonstrates a way these two fields can work together. Because I'm easy come, easy go, little high, little low. Any way the wind blows doesn't really matter to me, In fact, in almost every stage of a software project, I think of music. For example, when a product owner comes to me with some requirements, I immediately go, hey, slow it down. What do you want from me? What do you want from me? Yeah, I'm afraid. Yes, I am. What do you want from me? What do you want from me? And now when all requirements are clear, it's clearly time for implementation and testing. Now, while I'm coding, songs just tend to pop up in my head. For example, whenever I read stop in source code, my mind immediately goes, can't touch this. Hammer time. It does it every single time. Or when doing some conditional logic. Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe. Or when handling exceptions. Today is gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. By now you should have somehow realized what you gotta do. Well, handle this exception, you silly, and properly this time. This looks bad. Now, as it turns out, everyone has this silly ability in some way. For example, what does your brain tell you after hearing this? Now, it turns out there are 2 types of people in the world. The ones who go, ice, ice, baby, bim, bim, yeah? And the other ones who go, pressure, pressing down on me, pressing down on you, no man asks for, under pressure. See, you have it too. So stop laughing at me, right? Whenever I write a switch statement, this often happens. I'll spread my wings and I'll learn how to fly. I'll do what it takes till I touch the guide. Make a wish, take a chance, make a change, and break away. My wife made me to put this song in there, so sorry. But these are also brilliant lyrics to use as commit messages. See, take a chance, make a change. I like the last one. It's very nice and generic. Make a change, great one. Of course, after you have committed something, you need to push it. Push it to the limit. Past the point of no return. You've reached the top, but still you're gonna learn how to keep it. Now, whenever I hear a bug has been found in my software, this song instantly plays inside my head. When you try your best, but you don't succeed. Oh, when you feel so tired, but you can't sleep. Stuck in reverse. Lights will guide you home. And ignite, yeah, see, your bones. And I will try to fix you, blah, blah, blah. Now, if Fix You is the debug song, then The Scientist by the same band is definitely the debugging song. I was just guessing at numbers and figures, pulling the puzzles apart. Nobody said it was easy. No one ever said it would be so hard. And after your debugging, I'm going back to the start. Right, see? Now after fixing this bug, the bug song again holds a good commit message. Tears stream down your face. I promise you I will learn from my mistakes. And for the brave souls, those who stuck with me until the end, you are the chosen ones, our valiant knights who toil away without rest to become better versions of yourselves. To you kings and queens of men, I say this. Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, never gonna run around and desert you, never gonna make you cry, never gonna say goodbye, never gonna tell a lie and hurt you. Sorry, I just couldn't help myself. Now, all joking aside, whenever I deliver good software with all bugs fixed, I feel on top of the world every single time. Now take it in, but don't look down. 'Cause I'm on top of the world, hey! I'm on top of the world, hey! Waiting on this for a while now. Take my dirt to the dirt. I've been waiting to smile, hey! Been holding it in for a while, hey! Take it with me if I can. Been dreaming of this since a child. I'm on top of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The bar is very high now for other speakers. So we have quite a few people standing, so if everyone who's sitting down, could you just squidge over to the middle, and then it will allow people to sit down as well. Okay, so moving on. Let me just kill that. Right. So our next speaker. Our next speaker is a build master at Top Desk with interest for software development, testable code, synthesizers, gadgets, and youth. So talking about extreme feedback in DevOps and my wonderful my wonderful Dutch pronunciation. Please welcome on stage Joep Weijers.
So I'm going to talk about extreme feedback in DevOps. And first going to start with a little story about our company, Top Desk, and we abolished all email alerts. Yeah, we figured out they're not really effective. And some developers even had this email rule set up. If an email comes in from Jenkins, just put it to thrash, mark it as red, let's get rid of it. We needed something different. And we were thinking, well, we also have an operations department. They do their best to keep our customers online. But they still use text messages. It's no longer 1998 or something, where AI is really hip and happening. So I want a chatbot that tells me when I did something wrong. Now it turns out that Our company isn't really ready for this yet. It's a bit too aggressive, maybe. So we are instead using big monitors in every room, every team room, and there we show the status of each project. But the downside of these monitors, again, is they're pretty easy to ignore. You don't watch that screen all the time, or at least we don't pay people to do that. So we made a little warning light to that queries Jenkins, and then if a build turns red, it starts spinning, and it's not really bright, but it's really cheap as, comes from the action, and it makes a horrible noise when it turns. So people do notice it. Since then, I've upgraded to a brighter one, which is a bit more silent. Now this is, it's basically calling an API, using a little Python script, and then performing something in real life. And this is what I like to call extreme feedback. Now, this is only a simple example. Let's, and this is really a practical example, but let's explore a bit what we can do more. And let's take our inspiration from the Internet of Shit Twitter account. I don't know if you know about it. Stuff that shouldn't be put on the internet, but hell, it has an API, so let's write a Python program for it. So for the next example, I'm gonna take the location of all developers in our company, and I'm gonna feed it into my little program. And that's going to control nerve launchers. And it's an actual movie. I have some QR codes here. The movies are also available at the end. I'll have a link to a blog post that has all the movies, but they didn't fit in the Ignite format, unfortunately. So whenever you break the build, you get a dart to your head. That works. This is a little bit of history of Topdesk. These CDs, back when we were releasing on CDs, last minute bug fix, all CDs were useless. So we turned it into a relic, a poll of failure that we hand out if somebody breaks the build. We can automate that. Just get a remote control car and slam a Raspberry Pi on top and then drive it over to the developer if he broke the build. Again, this is not really a perfect way of monitoring because, look, it's standing there. I'm gonna ignore it. I didn't break the build. So we went to drones. Drones are really annoying. They have these really tiny motors, they high pitch RPM, that's annoying. But our developers, well, they brought hearing protectors from home. So I upgraded. If there are no developers left to break the build will remain green. Yes. But that's not really a valid business case. Couldn't get it through at upper management, so unfortunately. Then I also read this book, great book. It shows you how easy it is to hack or sniff the onboard diagnostic system of your car and hook up a Raspberry Pi to control a car. So we did some experiments with that by hooking it up to a Raspberry Pi. If you broke the build, your car will let you know. And it's also a bit of shaming if it's your car that's in the car park flashing that, hey, you did it wrong. But what's even better is to lock the doors of the car so that a developer can't go home, and really look at the face of a developer when he realizes that he can't go home until he fixed the build. That's what makes my day as build master. So, one final thing I tried out. Anybody knows Unit 4? It's a payment provider for salaries. And it has an API. Now, it took some time to get the credentials from our HR director, but next time somebody breaks the build, I'm going to let Jenkins send this request. I hope this will motivate our developers to keep the build green. Now, these are some of the crazy things that I could come up with and tried out, but I would say the sky's the limit. So if you have any crazy ideas, then come see me during the breaks or something. And on the tech blog, I have all the movies, so if you want to watch those, you can have a look there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joep, I presume, right? Joep. Okay, thank you, Joep. Close enough. Right, awesome. So our next session is going to be given from a Java architect at Ordina J Technologies, and I believe has 2 roles. It also says on LinkedIn that you're a senior Java developer. I'm gonna try to pronounce this. Belastingdienst. So that place. Thank you. So the talk is going to be about Apache Kafka, JMS on steroids, from Erik-Berndt Scheper.
Now, Okay, so this year I learned that Apache Kafka was named after Franz Kafka, depicted on this statue in Prague. And that's why I'd love to spend the next 5 minutes to find an awesome quote about Apache Kafka from Franz. So here's the plan. There are 3 main components in the Kafka platform: producers and consumers, Kafka Connect, and Kafka Streams. So I'll walk through each component, try to find Franz's best quote for it, and then the best one overall. So thanks to the producer and consumer APIs, we've been stuck with metaphors such as, hey, Kafka, that's like JMS on steroids. And why? Because they allow JMS, because they allow to post a topic, to post messages on topics, just like JMS. So speaking about destiny, the lifetime of a message ends with its consumption. And Franz's first quote I present today is the first sign of the beginning of understanding is the wish to die. So sometimes the solution to a problem is not so obvious. In such a situation, it may help that Franz told us, I usually solve problems by letting them devour me. The essence of message consumption, perhaps? So if you wonder why companies use Kafka, that's because Kafka enabled the era of fast data processing for them. And productivity is about being able to do things that you were never able to do before. Thanks, Apache. So looking back at the producer and consumer APIs, I love the analogy with the dinosaur. They're extinct. But Franz's best quote related to Apache Kafka most likely is, productivity is being able to do things that you were never able to do before. So going on with the second API, Kafka Connect, that brings us pre-packaged producers and consumers to connect Kafka topics to other applications and data systems. And most of these connectors of many are open source and well tested, so that helps a lot. I wonder if anyone remembers how difficult it used to be to get messages in and out of JMS. Well, Kafka Connect makes this easy. And anyone who keeps the ability to see beauty never grows old. A potential problem with Kafka connectors is unstable APIs, and such connectors can fail unexpectedly. And mark my words, debugging inside a live Connect cluster is an absolute nightmare. That's why even with a lot of open source connectors, there's always the obscure and missing one. And I've written a connector to the Telegram messaging API. And trust me, it's better to have many connectors that you don't need than to need a connector that's not available. So now looking back to all these quotes you've just seen, the most appropriate one is probably the evil of endless development, especially with regard to unstable APIs. Endless development, that sounds good, because I love my job. The third component, Kafka Streams, allows an application to act as a stream processor, consuming the input from one or more topics and producing output in other topics, like stream processors, just as I said. So I believe we can compare a streams application to the court in Franz Kafka's The Trial, where a bureaucratic priest tells us the court wants nothing from you. It receives you when you come and dismisses you when you go. An interesting option in Kafka Streams is to post messages in a topic that is used as the source of the processing logic, like recursion in stream processing. That sounds like, well, from love is that you are the knife which I plunge into myself. And my last quote today comes from the Blue Octava notebooks. Idleness is the beginning of all vice, the crown of all virtues. And I say that a fast data application without sufficient throughput doesn't make sense, but at least it's fun. So even though I prefer the prosaic quote, love is like a knife I plunge into myself, an even better one is probably the one from the priest. It receives you when you come and dismisses you when you go. Now please raise your hands for your favorite quotes from the ones you've just heard. So first, I'd like to see the hands for what we call evil is only a necessary moment in our endless development. Anyone who likes that one? Okay, the second one, please raise your hands for the court wants nothing from you. It receives you when you come and dismisses you when you go. The one from from Kafka Streams. Not a few, some. And the last one, productivity is being able to do things that you were never able to do before. Any ones who raised their hands for that one? That looks like the most one. Well, now I would like to show mine, and this is my favorite quote. Anyone who keeps the ability to see beauty never grows old. Thank you.
Right, we have a principal application engineer, and this is an interesting, interesting place to work, the National Aerospace Laboratory. Jacco has been working there for 20 years. I presume it's Jacco. Yeah, I'm going to say Jacco. Jacco van Weert, and I'm going to have a go at this title. No, I'm not. It's up to you.
Ja, dit gaat gewoon op het Nederlands hoor. Ja, dit gaat over een gameontwikkeling wat ik in de vrije tijd doe. Overdag ben ik gewoon met normale dingen aan het werk. En in de vrije tijd probeer ik een game te ontwikkelen. En dat is erg lastig. En ik ben ook begonnen met een heel simpel game, dacht ik. Dus een casual game. En dat was eigenlijk om te zien wat er allemaal bij kon kijken om een game te ontwikkelen en om het uit te brengen. En dit was Fruits on Rails. Een simpel game, dacht ik. Ik ben er toch nog 3 kwart jaar mee bezig geweest. En het grootste winst was eigenlijk, er zijn er maar 16 van verkocht. Maar de grootste winst was dat mijn kinderen in één keer dachten van, mijn vader kan toch nog iets. En hij heeft nog een nut in deze wereld, dus ik werd niet preventief geruimd. Het was een heel leuk spel om te maken. Maar ik dacht toch, het is niet echt wat voor mij. Gebruikt met Slick 2D en de lightweight game library. Wat eigenlijk mijn hart lag is in de gameontwikkeling is eigenlijk de wargaming. En dit is eigenlijk hoe het in het echt gaat dan als het bordspel. Het is een gigantisch spel. Het opzetten duurt alleen al een aantal uren. En dan kun je het spelen. En hier zit dan ook een computerspeltak van. En het grote doel is eigenlijk hier een spel voor te ontwikkelen. En er zijn een aantal voorbeelden al in de markt. Dit is Unity of Command. Dit is eigenlijk een bekend spel. Dat noemen ze niet echt een wargame, want we noemen het, de wargames noemen dit eigenlijk gewoon een puzzelspel. Het stelt niet zoveel voor, maar de graphics zijn leuk. Hierna komt een spel wat eigenlijk door een Nederlander is geschreven. Dat gaat al veel meer die richting in. En is ook behoorlijk succesvol. En wordt ook al steeds ingewikkelder. De graphics worden al minder, dus zie je vaak het verschil al. De bedoeling is hier, ja, eigenlijk gewoon met die poppetjes moet je allemaal de landen veroveren. Het is allemaal wat ingewikkelder dan Risk. Dit is een Java-spel, ook nu commercieel available. En pas uit sinds een aantal maanden. En die wordt gepubliceerd door Matrix Games. En is in Java geschreven, niet in JavaFX. En ik ben in JavaFX begonnen. En dit is mijn spel, in mijn handstrike. Het moet altijd een beetje Duits klinken. Ja, helaas. Ik ben al sinds 2010 bezig, dus een aantal jaren zijn er voorbij gegaan. Het is in JavaFX geschreven. Java 10, je gaat heel tijd verder, dingen weer aanpassen de hele tijd. Dit is een screenshot ervan. En dit is dus een JavaFX screen graph. Dus al die componenten zijn eigenlijk allemaal JavaFX zaken. Dus dat zijn gewoon iconen. Je kunt er combo-boxjes aangeven. Die plaatjes, dat zijn allemaal image views. Je kunt dus echt wel 10.000 image views kwijt in een scene graph. En dat gaat gewoon heel snel. De kaart is gebaseerd op OpenStreetMap. Die wordt dan geanalyseerd en er worden dan vectoren van gemaakt. Daar zijn ook rookwolkjes erbij. Er zit een particle engine zit erin in geprogrammeerd. Nou, een van de grootste problemen in zo'n spel is de battle mechanics. Om te zorgen dat die veldslagen een beetje realistisch verlopen. En daar zit ook heel veel tijd in en heel veel analyses worden erin gedaan. Een belangrijk onderdeel van is om dus de equipments te regelen. Je moet dus, alle waarden moeten allemaal opgezocht worden, wat het allemaal voorstelt. Dit is een enorme Excel-files zijn er aanwezig, die allemaal worden ingelezen door het spel. Hier worden Java-klasses uitgegenereerd. En die worden dan weer gebruikt om het spel te gebruiken. Dit is bijvoorbeeld hoe zo'n vehicle-hiërarchie in elkaar zit. Je hebt heeft een engine, een sensoren, equipment en signatuur. Die worden allemaal meegenomen om in de berekeningen te analyseren of bijvoorbeeld een tank wel of niet zichtbaar is. Wordt die vernietigd? Wat zijn de eigenschappen ervan? Hoeveel ammo heeft hij? Kan hij rookgranaten afvuren? Nou, dat is een hele riedel. Die moeten allemaal gedesigned worden om te kunnen spreken van een echt realistisch wargame. Nou, en een van de grootste problemen is de balancing altijd. Heb je die data allemaal geanalyseerd, heb je ze allemaal neergezet, dan blijkt dan bepaalde wapens overpowered te zijn en dan werkt het hele spel in één keer niet meer goed. En dan kun je weer opnieuw beginnen. En daarnaast is de AI is natuurlijk een van de meest enge dingen. Er zijn een aantal termen die daar allemaal gebruikt worden, waar ik even op ingaat is de laatste eigenlijk, de influence maps. Dat is eigenlijk een grote array die laat rekenen van waar zijn bepaalde posities beschikbaar. Dit is bijvoorbeeld een influence map van de power. Die poppetjes, dit is gewoon gejat van het internet hoor. Die geven aan waar de tegenstander zit en dan kun je dus een frontbepaling doen. Kun je zien waar is de tegenstander krachtig. Waar moet ik mijn veilige gebieden definiëren? En de line of sight berekening is hier wel gemapt. Het is een belangrijke. Wat kun je zien? Wat kunnen die units allemaal zien en wel of niet bekijken? Al die kaarten bij elkaar, er zijn heel veel soorten, die kun je weer samenvoegen. En dan krijg je dan een combinatiekaart. En dit is bijvoorbeeld de defensiekaart. En de lichte punten, hij is wat omhoog getrokken is die. De lichte punten geven aan de beste positie voor een verdediging. Dus dit is uiteindelijk de resultaat van een analyse op, dacht ik, 4 verschillende kaarten. Die dus dat aan kunnen geven. Nou, komt het ooit af? Ik heb geen idee. De ellende kan gevolgd worden op Twitter. En dat zal waarschijnlijk nog wat jaren gaan duren, denk ik. Dank u wel.
Thank you very much. I literally have no idea what just happened for the last 5 minutes, but that's good. Okay, right. Next up, we have a session from a polyglot developer working as a consultant at Quinter, who are one of the sponsors of this conference, right? Yeah, excellent. And also a software developer at ING. And the session is going to be lessons learned from giving a Kotlin workshop from David Stibbe, and that was probably the easiest name. So I thank you very much for that. Okay, please give it up to David.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. So, I'm a developer for Quinter, and in that case, as a developer, I've given quite a few workshops over the years. And today I'm going to talk about the latest workshop I gave and the lessons actually that we learned from it. So, the workshop is about Kotlin, and well, as you know, Kotlin is awesome. It's better than Java, easier than Scala. So I discovered it about a year ago and decided with a colleague of mine, Ali Meskat, to give a workshop about it. So our first challenge was actually the case from how do we give this workshop? Yeah, we could do it in paper, have people write it, type it over. We could do a JUnit test. We could let them check out code. Eventually, we decided upon IntelliJ, the AdoTools plugin. AdoTools plugin is a plugin by IntelliJ, JetBrains, and it basically transforms your IDE IntelliJ into a workshop environment to learn languages for the teacher as well as the student. This is what it looks like. On the left, you have all tasks and divided in courses and lessons. On the right, you have your task description. In the middle, you have a little bit of code for the assignment with a nice placeholder that you need to replace. So if you replace it, so let's say you say the wrong answer. You go to the little checkbox, and in this case, it tells you it's incorrect. It should have been hello Kotlin. So it's quite visual for the student, easy to interpret. Also for the teacher, this will be his view, it's very easy to create. It's basically unit tests, and the task description are in HTML or Markdown, whichever you prefer. It's nothing new, it's all familiar. So very easy to pick up. We also added the main method to all tasks so they could play around a little bit, because a test only gives you whether something's wrong, but doesn't allow you any freedom. So a main method in that case would be easy. Our second challenge was determining the target audience. The target audience determines the scope of our assignments. So we decided, let's focus on experienced programs who never heard of Kotlin, never used Kotlin. What does this give us? We don't have to explain programming, only explain the syntax of Kotlin, and tell them how awesome it is and way better than everything else they've tried. So, in June, we held a workshop at the Stack conference in, where was it again? Well, in the Netherlands. And it was a pretty good conference, well received, and the workshop as well. But at the end, we got some feedback, positive and some negative. The most notorious assignment we had was this assignment. We gave them a function which had to produce a JSON string, quite easy, some values and keys. Nothing to be concerned about. And the goal was basically to teach them about raw strings and string templates to replace some things and no escaping. However, the biggest problem they had was none of that. It was basically indentations and quotes. It costed them for half an hour. And that was the first lesson we learned. Only test things that matter. If it doesn't matter, don't test it. Ignore it, or just don't put it in your task. So the quotes, Either put them in the test and say it matters, or just forget about them. Second lesson was explain what matters, no more, no less. So if we wanted to have them learn about indentation, we should have explained it. Otherwise, just say, go to the manual and see for yourself. The third lesson was clear error messages. We also had some compiler errors, which frustrated the student, were unclear, and basically were very hard for the teacher to solve. So either make sure those do not occur. Fourth lesson was make the assignment make sense. So don't give any functions that say, okay, you have fx, you have to increment it 30 times and see what happens. Make it relatable. The fourth lesson, there will always be this one guy with Spark Ultra and Emacs and ask you, why does this work? He's there, it will be there, it means well, have patience. And last but not least, you have to remember it's a workshop, a course, not an exam. The people are there to learn, you're there to teach, not to test whether they work well. That's the assignment for the employee. So we updated our workshop. Coming month we'll be giving it again, and hopefully it will be even better. Thank you.
Okay, next speaker then. So we have a freelance full-stack software developer, a bass player with Jamcat, just to let you know there's still a guitar on stage, a Linux and open source enthusiast, and you are speaking about 4 ways to deal with the fear of missing out. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to Tom Wetjens.
Okay, so hi everybody, and thanks for coming to my talk, my Ignite talk. And today I will talk to you about fear of missing out and how I have found ways to deal with that myself. So for a couple of years I've been using social media and Twitter primarily to stay up to date with the things that are happening in our industry. And when I was doing that, I was starting getting overwhelmed by seeing all these cool projects that people were doing. And what I was having was, I had FOMO. I had a fear of missing out. I was thinking, wow, these guys are doing all these cool projects. I must be missing out on something cool there, and I'm stuck in my current project. So the question is, what is FOMO exactly? Wikipedia defines it as, which is on the next slide, FOMO is a fear of regret, which may lead to a compulsive concern that one might miss an opportunity or experience. So you're basically anxious that you're missing out on something cool. So let me give you some examples. Sometimes when I talk to developers, they mention that they have a lot of books they want to read on a list. And I think to myself, I don't have such a list. Am I missing out by not having such a list and reading the books that should be on it? Another nice example would be that if I look around at the conference, I see a lot of conference stickers on laptops. I don't visit that many conferences. So am I missing out by not visiting that many conferences? Who knows? Another example would be, lately I decided that I should join some meetups. So I installed the meetup app and I got like 10,000 meetups in my area that I could go to, and there were so many I couldn't choose, so I didn't go. So did I miss out on anything by not going there? I don't know. And a big thing that I had was I was constantly checking my phone, checking Twitter to stay up to date. I was getting a sense of restlessness. I was even having sleeping problems, and I had difficulty concentrating. So, I mean, that means it's a really big deal. And a big problem is with social media is that people only share their success stories, or mostly. But I asked to myself, what about their failed projects? Does anyone ever post their failed projects on Twitter? Probably just a small part. And another problem with social media is that instead of competing with a couple of developers in your local area, suddenly you're connected to all these developers around the world. And you may get the feeling that you're competing with all of them. And that may also lead to a feeling of envy. In general, you can state that you're always missing out on something. If you're doing thing A, then you're probably missing out on thing B. But that's fine. One thing isn't necessarily a better experience than the other thing. So that helps in dealing with this. Which brings me to this point. As developers, we have to realize that we are committed to a lifelong of learning. We have to keep learning all the time. And the problem with this is that it brings a real burden upon us as developers. Because it takes a lot of time to stay up to date with the things in our industry. And it takes also a lot of energy to constantly be open-minded to new things. So it's really hard. And we have to take it easy on ourselves if sometimes we're not able to. When dealing with my FOMO, I try to figure out what are the things that motivate me. So one important thing is that I want to have freedom in choosing the things that I like to do. I want to keep learning. And also I want to have a sense of purpose, that the thing that I'm doing has purpose. So the third thing that I do is I try to put things into perspective. You have to realize that you can't know everything and you can't do everything because your time is limited. So put it into perspective and think to yourself, it's not that bad. So additionally, there will probably always be people that, in your view, are working on cooler things or better projects. But you know, that doesn't define who you are as a developer. It doesn't make you a bad developer. So yeah, put it into perspective and deal with your nice project that you're doing. So the second thing is that I try to prioritize the things that I want to learn, new things, based on what I like and what I like to do in projects. So what I'm good at, for example. And I try to focus on those topics and leave the rest out. The third thing that I do is I try to align my learning efforts with my career. So I try to see which projects seem cool to me, which clients do I want to work for, and see what skills or what frameworks or technologies they need, and try to focus my learning on that. And the fourth thing that I do is I try to decide for each subject or area, do I want to be an expert in this? Do I really want to go in depth? Or is it fine if I just stay a little bit all round and know a little bit about everything? But decide that you can't know everything. And last, you should embrace the feeling of FOMO because there's always something to learn. And recently I learned that apparently it decreases with age. So thanks a lot.
So FOMO is a fear of missing out. Yeah. So you're a guitarist standing next to a guitar with an audience. This room is full of this room is full of FOMO right now. Okay, now last up we have a software architect by breed, a fellow at Luminous, and this is I'm looking forward to this one. Quantum Computing Nonsense Survival Guide. Apologies for my pronunciation. Give a warm welcome to Angelo van der Sijpt.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for keeping the light entertainment until the end of the session. That's good. You may recognize this thing as the current storm of nonsense going around in the name of blockchain in our industry. Solves everything, help. I have 15 seconds, come on guys. There's another storm brewing on the horizon, and that is the one that has to do with quantum computing. You don't need to be an expert to weather this storm, but I'll give you a few myths that you need to recognize and at least do something with. I won't go into all the details of how quantum computing works, but remember, in classical systems, bit can be either 1 or 0. Quantum systems, it's somewhere in between until you measure the thing. When you measure it, it collapses to a 1 or a 0 with a given probability, and we have ways of influencing these probabilities. One of the first myths that gets thrown around is that quantum systems find the correct answer by doing all the calculations at once. That is not true. A quantum system can be in all states at once by a system known as entanglement. Still, when you measure the system, it will collapse to a given state with a given probability. And we have ways to nudge the system into a better probability for reaching a desirable state. And that is what quantum algorithms do. You may need to repeat your experiment, in other words. No one knows how it works, I've heard a few times. Erwin Schrödinger, the same guy with the cat, in the 30s he wrote that entanglement is a core property of what quantum systems are. And even in the late 50s, Richard Feynman, this is a great book by the way if you need something to read over the Christmas holiday, he came up with a theoretical way of calculating using these things. So we have been thinking about this for about 60 years. People know how it works. We're just getting to practical implementations. Do you need to become a quantum computing expert? Only if you really want to. For the most time, it makes quantum solutions are just classical solutions with extra steps. There's a good chance you will just use web APIs. For instance, Amazon nonlinear search, which I made up for your benefit, which is a quantum implementation of doing search over non-structured data, or it will probably even be hidden somewhere in some insanely fast database, and you have no clue that it does this. Quantum computing solves any problem? No. As I said, in most cases, quantum computing is just, it's a classical system but with some additional properties. And you may remember a diagram like this. We have easy problems, the P-style problems. We have really hard problems. And these really hard problems are really hard because they're hard to calculate and hard to verify that the solution you have is actually optimal. We have the space in between where calculating an answer is difficult, but finding out whether it is optimal is not that hard. And a subset of this is BQP, the bounded error quantum probability. In this case, you can use a quantum computer to efficiently come up with guesses, and you can use a classical computer to find out whether it is optimal. That's a really small set. This also means that cryptography is not broken. Some of our parts of cryptography are in BQP. RSA, elliptic curve, those are in BQP. AES, which we use for block encryption, is not. And there's even more good news. We are already working on post-quantum cryptography. Cryptography which you can do on a classical system, which you cannot speed up with a quantum system. 9th conference of this already. We're making good progress in this. Quantum computing will be everywhere. Well, no. Look at this thing. It's huge. It's susceptible to noise and needs to be cooled to a few degrees above absolute zero. There's no way we can cram this in your phone in the next few decades. It'll be here any day now. No, sorry. This chip has 16 qubits, state of the art is around 70. Practical solutions need a few thousand, probably a few orders of magnitude more than that. The good news is it's an engineering problem now, and we can get there. It'll take time, but it's an engineering problem. Summing up, we don't do all calculations at once. Yes, we have a pretty good idea how it works, and no, you will not need to write your own quantum algorithms. You probably use a web API. That would have been really impressive, right? You can solve any problem? No. There's a sliver of state space which you can use quantum computing on. They will be everywhere. Just too unwieldy for that for now. Crypto is broken. Some parts of it are, but we are getting around it. It'll be here any day now. No, my best guess, years, decades perhaps, until we have practical solutions. So there you have it. Your quantum computing nonsense survival guide. I've been Angelo van der Sijpt. You can come see me at the Luminous booth. I will probably be there for the next few hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Angelo. And just a final, actually, if your hands haven't been worn out by Wetjens opening, let's give a final round of applause to everyone who's given a session today.